You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Hello, guys. Welcome to this week's episode of the Bright Life Podcast. I am back. I was at a conference all week last week. We were having days that were like 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. And so I wanted to bring you my best energy and focus this week versus trying to piece together something after such really long days, early mornings. And once I process everything that I learned a little bit more, I'll be happy to share it here. But in the meantime, I realized that the last episode marked 6 months of doing this podcast. One episode every single week, and I have learned so much on this journey that I thought it would be really fun to share 4 things that I have learned over 6 months of running this podcast that I think anyone who is about to start something in their life, who is trying to chase a dream or a goal, might be able to apply to their own journey for a little bit of encouragement and inspiration. So when I was thinking about what are the things that stand out to me, what have I gained from doing 26 episodes so far, thinking of something every single week to put out there, here's what they are. The first one is be consistent, and the ideas, the inspiration, and the results will come. So I set out to pretty much every single week have something to share with you guys. And I really think there's something about setting that vision and holding to it as best you can, because there were so many weeks where I didn't feel like I had the time, or I didn't feel like I had something to say, or I wasn't sure what I was going to even put out there until the day before or the day of. And I always found something, like something always came through. And that is the lesson that I even learned when I was producing a blog post. I used to do a blog every single weekday for years. And you start to, like, if you set yourself up with the idea that maybe things will come through, maybe they won't, that is going to be your situation. But if you set yourself up with the vision that I'm always going to have something to share, I'm always going to have one little nugget that I learn and that I can pass on to someone else, that is going to be your experience. So I think just getting really clear on how can I be consistent here, and how can I trust in myself that I'm going to pull through, and trust even in whatever else you believe in, that you're going to get the inspiration, you're going to get the ideas. I think that is a really great way to just operate. And the consistency part is not always the fun part, but it's the part that creates the whole result. It's the part that gives you a podcast where you have 26 episodes suddenly, even though it feels like you just started a month ago. And I don't think this has to be a creative endeavor thing. I think it's even like if you're chasing a health goal, the consistency is not like the fun part. It's not the glitzy part. It's not like the standing on the podium at the end having won or see the result of your efforts part, but it is the part that gives you the result at the end. And so anything in my life, in your life, I really have learned that there's power in deciding what you're going to show up for, and showing up even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like you know exactly what to do. And it's partly like believing in yourself, and it's partly just trusting that if you put your full effort out there, then the rest is going to come and fall into place. So that's one thing, is just like being as consistent as possible. And again, look at me, like it's not to say that there won't be one time when you really cannot do it, or one time when you really with my conference, I did not know that they were going to be 13-hour days, and some mornings were at 4 a.m. And so it's not to say that like you can't ever mess up and things are off. Like that all or nothing thinking, I think, is really detrimental to pretty much everything in life. But just that consistency and that practice of this is what I'm committing to. And if there is one time I can't do it, I'm going to get right back on the next time. And I'm not going to let that be the gap that just keeps going. So I think consistency is a big one that I've really learned. Another one is getting really clear on your intention for something at the outset. So there can be all kinds of reasons you do something. If you are starting a business, maybe it's to make money, maybe it's to create freedom, maybe it's to be your own boss. If you're starting a blog or a podcast or a YouTube channel, maybe it's to be creative, maybe it is to monetize, maybe it is to reach people and inspire people. And I think for me, getting really clear on my intention for the podcast was super helpful. So for me, for this podcast, my thought was I really wanted, one, a creative outlet. I just felt like I had a lot going on in work and in business, but I didn't have somewhere to just put me, like my soul, my heart, my learnings. And so that was one thing that I wanted through this podcast, is a place to do that. And then two, I wanted to just, if I inspired even one person with an episode, if I gave hope or encouragement or pushed someone to go for their dreams, just with one person out there per episode, that to me was like worthwhile. That to me just felt like, okay, I have these things I'm learning. I have these things I'm going through that I'm constantly working through and trying to evolve in. Why not share that with someone else? I can't just keep those inside of me. And so that was really my intention, is just to have a place to be creative and to inspire other people, hopefully. And so for me, that was a really helpful thing to get clear on in the beginning, because if I had the intention of growing it to 1 million people right away, like I would probably feel disappointed, right? Like if I had the intention that this was going to be something that grew my business or was a monetary stream, I would be kind of confusing what I really truly wanted for it, and I might feel disappointed in some ways when that's not necessary at all, because that was never my intention to begin with. Now, if this grows into something like that, great, then it means it can inspire more people, it can give me even more abilities to be creative. But do you see how that underlying intention really makes the difference between what you create and how you feel in what you create and what your results are? I'm just starting to read a book that I've heard many people recommend now, and whenever I hear that, I always feel like that's the time. Okay, this book, there must be something about this that's trying to get my attention right now in this time in my life. And it's called The Seat of the Soul. And in it, they really talk about how you get clear on your intention, because that's the cause, and there's always an effect related to what your intention is. Not actually what your actions are, but the almost intention behind them. And so just to be mindful of that. And so I think that's been something that I've really learned through this podcast, is just get clear on what your intention is, and then don't expect something else to come from it, and don't allow yourself to feel persuaded or disappointed by other intentions you didn't even set, So that's number 2, is get clear on your intention, and number 1 is be consistent as possible. The third one is think about the ways that you can make the journey part, the consistency part, fun. Because here's the thing, like maybe one day, years down the line, you will have the result. You'll have the outcome of all your hard work. But that might be a fleeting 15 seconds of yahoo, like you did it, like you're excited, great, it feels so good, like you got the promotion, you got the job, like you got the income, you got the impact. But if you gave up 10 years of your life, or 5 years, or 1 year, and you didn't even enjoy it because you were just striving for that outcome, like that might not be as fulfilling as you expect it to be. There's something where psychologists believe that or have studied that there's this kind of set point that people get to with happiness, where you might get a ton of money or a ton of accolades, a ton of promotions, and you feel really happy for a little bit, but then you kind of go back to your baseline. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I do think there's something about like, if you're spending all your energy and all your effort to get to this one thing one day, but you didn't even enjoy the journey along the way, that's going to be a lot of life that you miss out on and a lot of fun that you could have had striving for this thing that you think you want now, and you have no idea how it's going to feel when you get it. So that's kind of been something that I've tried to do with this podcast that I want to bring in, honestly, to more areas of my life, is just make it fun. Like, enjoy the journey instead of just the outcome. So for me, like, the ways that I did that is I really celebrated. Like, every time I put out an episode, I allowed myself to be like proud of myself. Like, I did it. I came up with something to say for 15 minutes again that hopefully can inspire someone else. That's amazing. Like, anytime someone messaged me on social media or shared the podcast or left a review, I allowed that to make me feel just really grateful and really good. And I loved seeing that because it just, again, went back to that intention of wanting to make a difference in someone's day. And so feeling like those emotions, to me, I feel like I've allowed myself to feel them all along the way. So if one day this podcast becomes much bigger, if more people are listening, I won't have missed out on every single interaction along the way. I'll really have been present for it and have allowed them to fuel me and to keep me going on the way to perhaps something bigger. All right, so I've just seen a lot about that lately in masterminds I'm in and entrepreneur circles, and I think it's a trait that I don't naturally have. I tend to be very outcome, goal focused, and like, I'll relax when I get there. And I'm now in my life trying to reel myself back and be like, how can I make every day a little bit more pleasurable? How can I be a little bit more present with everything in my life? How can I just enjoy the journey and the story that I'm building instead of just that one day far off outcome? And I think that can go for whether you have a health goal, right? We've talked about this before where it's like, yes, maybe one day you want that ultimate goal, but it's going to be so much easier to stick to and just so much more enjoyable if you can do things that you love along the way, like movement you love, eating food that you love, like finding ways to love drinking a bunch of water and getting a good night of sleep and adding self-care to your day, like having a good nighttime routine that makes you feel so cared for as you fall asleep. Like, what a better way to get to a health goal than like doing something so extreme that you hate every single step of the way for months. And then once you get the goal, you're kind of like, well, great. Like, what is that even worth? Like, not going to every social event all those months. You know what I mean? And I saw something on social media. This valedictorian was saying that as soon as he found out he was in the running to get this GPA, it was on. Like, he was going to go for everything to get it. And he did. He got it. And he didn't go to almost any social things. He, sacrificed a lot to do it. And he did. He described feeling that feeling of, yes, I did it, for like 15 seconds. But at the end of it, he was kind of like, okay, so like that's it. And it's not to say that's not a worthwhile pursuit and that's not amazing. And I definitely like worked my booty off to get some good grades as well. But I think it's just that being mindful of, are you still tending to yourself? Are you still tending to your relationships? Are you still having life and fun in this journey and along the way to your bigger goals? So that's been something that I've really learned and tried to practice with this podcast, and it's been fun to see the difference that that's made. I would say the last one, and this is maybe even the most important one with the lessons I've learned, is the fear is the way. So I was so nervous. Remember the first episode when I was like telling you guys, like I was so nervous to record it? I spent probably years, honestly, like thinking about doing a podcast. I spent definitely months getting every little piece in place and kind of being in my head about what will people think? Are people going to leave mean comments online? Like, do I, even have anything of value to share? Are people going to think I'm trying to be like so, fancy sharing my ideas or whatever? But what I really learned in business, in this podcast, in any other creative pursuit or place where I'm trying to evolve to the next level is like, you have to head straight into the fear. Rumi says, what you seek is seeking you. And I just think that's so true. I think if there's something that's on your mind that you can't get out of your mind and you maybe have some fear around and you maybe don't feel like you're ready for, or you're worried about what people will think, I just think there is something about that experience that is calling you. And the act of doing it is where you're going to find the growth and where you're going to get over those fears and where you're going to learn that you can go head like straight into them and get over them and not be so affected by them. I just think that's where like your growth is. That's where your next level is. That's where the teaching is. And so it's almost like looking for the things that you're still afraid of and walking right into them and seeing how you can do more of them. This actually reminds me of something that I was talking about with some other women in a mastermind that I'm in for business. And one of them had said, make a list of everything that you think you can't share on social media. And then one by one, just challenge yourself to do it and to be that open and that vulnerable. And see what comes from it. See what that expansion, that ability to be bigger than what you think you are brings into your life. And it's not about like sharing the depths of your soul or things that really you feel like you're not prepared to share, obviously, right? And that's not what it's about, but it's more just that challenge of like, you are bigger than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can do. Like you can become someone that may just be in your dreams now, but if it's in your dreams, like that's there for you. That's your desires calling you to that next part of your life. And so I think for me, it's just a continual reminder that it's not that the fear ever goes away. It's just that whatever that fear is that keeps coming back, that is the way through. That is the way to whatever life is calling me to or you to. And so I've definitely seen that with this podcast where I was so scared of it. But once I did it, one, no one was really mean to me like I thought they would be. I'm sure one day, like, there'll be whatever comments online and that's okay though, right? Like you realize you start to feel like, okay, I can handle that. And also like, I felt so free being able to share who I was and put it out there and be like, yeah, I did share something vulnerable and I don't know what people will think of it, but this is who I am and this is stuff I believe in and this is what I'm going through these days. And just realizing that you can put yourself out there and you can put your voice out there and stand strong in that, to me felt so powerful. And I know that was one of the great lessons of this podcast for me. And so who knows what it will be for you, right? Like, I don't know what you're thinking about doing, what comes to mind when I talk about this and what the fears are, but I guarantee you that whatever those fears are, that's the things that you'll get past once you do the thing you're afraid of. Those are the things that you're going to be stronger than. Those are the things that you're going to have your evolution through. And so I would just encourage you to like lean into the fear. Just know that like the more you can go straight into it, the more you can open up this whole world that you didn't even know was possible for yourself. So those are 4 things I've learned from 6 months, my first 6 months as a podcaster. Number 1, be as consistent as possible. Number 2, get clear on your intention. Number 3, find ways to make the journey fun, not just the outcome. And number 4, recognize that the fear is the way. What you seek is seeking you. All right? Can't wait to hear what this brings up for you. Let me know if you had any lessons that you learned in any of your creative journeys as a podcaster, as a videographer, or anything else. And I will see you next time on the Bright Life Podcast. Thank you so much for listening in. If you loved this episode, it would mean so much to me if you share it on Instagram stories and tag me so I can personally thank you for helping get the message out. I am so grateful to be on this journey with you. Until next time, talk to you soon.